Hi everyone. Thanks for being here. Some fantastic presentations there, really comprehensive. I think we're going to talk about MulteFire, of course, but in the context of private LTE, we'll open the conversation up, and small cells. I'll ask, my name's James Blackman, I'm from Enterprise IoT Insights. I'll ask the panel perhaps to introduce themselves and their companies and say something of their experiences in this space, the intersection with private LTE, MulteFire, and small cells. David, perhaps you can start off.
Sure. My name is David Orloff. I'm chair of the Small Cell Forum representing AT&T. And so with AT&T, my day job, I do RAN validation for the company. So any new RAN products, including small cells and macro cells, indoor, outdoor, goes through my shop into the AT&T network. For the Small Cell Forum, I work with the forum, obviously, to drive as we are looking to bring 5G together.
Yes. Hello, my name is Rueddenklau. I'm working for the company Infineon Technologies. This is a semiconductor company based in Germany, Munich. We are working there on solutions for 5G radio side, specifically on the sub-6 and millimeter wave, which for sure should go in a certain way into small cells sooner or later, depends on the deployments. But I'm also here as a co-chair for 5G ACAA. ACAA stands for the Automation and Connected Industry. So that's alliance was founded in April last year for Industry 4.0, you can say, or industrial IoT. And I will talk mainly also from that view. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Piyush Raj. I'm a director of innovation at American Tower Corporation. American Tower is the largest neutral host infrastructure provider for in US and 15 other countries. And I also lead, I'm part of CPRS Alliance, which is a shared spectrum in US, and I also chair the deployment and operations work group there.
Hi there, I'm Mick from Druid Software. We are a company that provide soft core applications for complete sort of core execution for 2, 3G, 4G, and we're working on 5G. We've got some significant deployments for private networks in Europe and the US. Very notably in Europe, we've some deployments in for industrial automation at Rueddenklau through our partner in Holland, Koning & Hartmann. So we've a lot of experience. We've been working in the area for the past 10 years. And you know, this is where the rubber hits the road. We earn our living selling private networks.
Thanks very much, everyone. So perhaps we can start with the US and and Piyush, you're on the CPRS Alliance. There's a lot of activity there. Can you talk generally about the momentum you're seeing in the market and the appetite for private LTE?
Yeah, so in US, almost 3.5 years back, FCC released a shared spectrum, which was very unique, and how you can share spectrum between the US Navy and having multiple tiers of licensing. And that brought in multiple use cases. One of them was private LTE. And there is enterprises, particularly large venues and residential and office buildings have been facing is the challenge is connectivity inside the building. And that has become very important for their business. And one of the challenges, the existing neutral host opportunity or options that they had was not enough to deploy connectivity solutions. And there have been non-convergence of network. There have been disparate networks in the building. But what CPRS did was allowed, being that you have an 80 megahertz of spectrum for LTE that you can deploy inside the building for private LTE networks, it opened up a lot of opportunities at different use cases. So in the last 2.5 years, the CPRS Alliance has been working aggressively on commercializing that effort, and they have made a huge progress in that. Very soon the spectrum will be commercialized this year sometime, and that will open up a lot of opportunities to deploy this. We have been doing some trials which have been very successful in having enterprise understanding the utility and the value of deploying private LTE for their business. So that has been going pretty well. And that's also allow us to deploy one network that can be shared within multiple use cases. for enterprise and also for operators to extend their coverage.
Thanks, Piyush. And Mick, you're active in the space. You're rolling this stuff out now. Are you seeing a pent-up demand for private LTE in certain markets? You talked about ports and this kind of stuff. I wonder if you can expand on that a little bit.
Yes, I mean, definitely the biggest sort of hamstring in our sort of business is the lack of spectrum, the lack of available spectrum. Like we're convinced, and we're very big supporters of CPRS in the US. We think it's absolutely fantastic, and it's really, that will be a watershed. We think for as a small company, that will be a watershed for our business. But there is enormous pent-up demand for private networks. I mean, the big verticals that we're seeing are large campus environments, particularly for private nets. That is, hospital cases. I mean, where the communication, whether it's IoT or voice communications, is mission critical. These people are not willing to, trust the operator. I don't mean that in any negative way, the operator, but they want to be in control completely, of their own destiny. And if they have a problem with coverage, they want to fix it with putting a small cell somewhere. They don't want to have to call anybody. They want immediate action. And the best sort of thing about immediacy, the best example rather of immediacy is we were speaking with a very big global chip manufacturer, right? And we were pitching, obviously, private networks, and our friendly MNO were pitching their own service, and the guy said, "Yeah, I had him in yesterday." He said, "This big company, and they said we're really reactive. If you fire somebody, we'll get them off the net by noon tomorrow." And the guys that laughed, just, "I want it immediate. I want it now." So that gives you we said, well, we can do that. You can go to your office, you can log on and just delete the user. So it's about being in control, I think. And being about being in control of your own destiny, your coverage, your capacity, building it yourself, and being able to trust it and know it's going to be there.
And Uwe, this issue of control and reliability in the industrial space is essential, right? I mean, talk about the barriers perhaps for enterprises in industry, what they're asking for, what can't they get now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what they're asking for. So in this, as I said, I take now the head of the alliance. In this alliance, there's a big debate. What are the requirements there from the industrial side? Currently, when we talk about industrial, we are looking there at 4 areas there, which is one is the logistic area, so coming from the outside with fleet maintenance, or inside the area with automated vehicles even. Then the motion control area, which is a very specific one and has the highest requirements. I will talk about this. And then you have also the augmented reality. They see there a case. And finally, also generally about mobile robots, we call this inside the factory. So the focus there is in the factory side, and currently they use mainly wired solutions. In certain cases, Wi-Fi for sure. Wi-Fi is also used. What they expect is from the wireless, if it's LTE or 5G NR, they expect the same liability and reliability. This means they talk about these 2 terms. They mean from the availability, they say this must function similar to a wired solution. Therefore, they say they want to have 5 to 6 nines liability, so 99.9999%, which is really a challenge, a major challenge. And they say also that this should be then also liable, not only available, also liable over a certain time, so certain mean time between failures, if we talk about those details. And these are the expectations when they say, okay, we want to replace this because we see there a major benefit in the wireless solution for the private, or here we call it even to be more neutral, non-public networks in this case. They want to see similar things, and especially the liability and reliability like for wired solutions. And I think that's...
Does LTE and 5G down the line get you there? Does that get you that 6 nines reliability that they're asking for, or is there work to be done?
I would say the current specifications of 3GPP release 15 is not there yet. This was looking more at the, let's say, options when you talk about augmented reality for the high data rates. The release 16 is now looking into this to achieve this with certain potential solutions, which is coming from the technical side with maybe new coding schemes, multiple antennas, which is related then back to the small cells also.
And I think we'll come back to this question of reliability perhaps. But David, what about from a small cells point of view? I mean, how easy are these systems to install now? Are they plug and play yet? Can you talk about the work you're perhaps doing in the small cells forum around that to make them, around automation, self-optimization, the cost effectiveness of these solutions?
Sure. So what we're doing in the forum is really working to bring 5G together, and a lot of that is based on the strong need as the others have spoke about, whether it be IoT, enhanced mobile broadband, reduced latency, all bringing the services to the customer that they need, and so when it gets to the enterprise, and we talked about IoT just a minute ago, very important, edge computing very important, from a perspective of how you monetize and how the ownership model is different for these types of systems. So when we really look at trying to remove the barriers for enterprise deployment, what we see is ease of deployment, and that's the first thing that you brought up there, how fast you can put them in, and private LTE being one of the easier ones because it combines a simplified installation with a cost model that the customer and the enterprise can really understand, bringing in those aspects of monetization or efficiencies, cost benefit from IoT, from edge compute. But yes, that's really the real benefit is of the private LTE, whether it be with neutral host as well, to get past all of those cost barriers for the enterprise.
And just quickly, perhaps, Dave, there was an announcement came out from you guys today about what you're doing on APIs and this kind of stuff. Does that impact this ease of deployment, this kind of stuff? Sure.
So the announcement that we put out yesterday was around our femtocell APIs FAPI protocol for 5G. And that is really trying to reduce cost as you are putting the APIs at the chipset level, allowing the hardware on the ASICs and whatnot to be built really efficiently, cost effectively from a hardware perspective that goes all the way up through the layers. On the network FAPI side, NFAPI, it's a similar approach, but that's more of the open front haul basis, and that's where we really looked, different from some of the other industry associations. We're really focused on the end building environment with that, trying to balance the cost of the front haul with the bandwidth requirement that you want to see there. And so, yeah, really big announcement. We're really proud of the work there that we've done.
And Mick, a question for you perhaps. How are you seeing this play with Wi-Fi in the deployments you're putting down? Is it playing with Wi-Fi, or is Wi-Fi being moved aside?
Well, I mean, we what we do is obviously we're selling sort of a soft core solution for LTE and indeed MulteFire going forward. So what we generally say to people is, if we take an example of a healthcare environment, we say that look guys, Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi. It's obviously, it's here, it's going to be here to stay. So a typical example, we would say, look, you want something that to serve your critical, mission critical needs, and that should be a dedicated sort of network based on incremental spectrum, which is private LTE. We say by all means you're going to have Wi-Fi here, but look at what you're using it for. So we say, look, put the patients and the visitors to the hospital, let them work away with that, and maybe dedicate this new spectrum. It is incremental, and dedicate that to the medics so they have something, with capacity and coverage that they can trust. And really that's and also don't forget it's a lot more secure as well. So there's a couple of points that we make and to try and help that sale go along.
Yes, okay. And Piyush, is there a kind of obviously the situation here is that there are any number of scenarios with the management of these networks. Is there a kind of a rule of thumb perhaps for who manages the network, whether it's the enterprise or the operator perhaps even, or a third party?
Yeah, so there are multiple models out there. Obviously, with private LTE enterprise, if they have capability to do that, they can manage the network. But what we have seen in the past is like their core business. For example, if you look at the retail mall, or if you look at a stadium, their core business is making sure that fans comes to. They own the real estate, and they want to make sure they have create a good experience for the fans who come to watch the game or the people who come to the mall. So obviously they don't have a lot of resources dedicated towards deploying a private LTE or managing it. So that's why the role of a managed service provider, a third party, a neutral host provider comes into play. And also it's a matter of also efficiency, because if you have capacity, you want to use the same network for multiple use cases. So you can also, like a third party can also bring other use cases, like bringing in carriers to share the same network. So obviously it is possible to do both ways, but traditionally it has been more of that enterprise would like the third party or someone to manage the network. But what we are doing at CPRS Alliance is, one of the work group items I have is to simplify it so that if enterprise wants to manage it, they have an opportunity to do that, so that they don't get caught up in the complexity of LTE being a little more complex than Wi-Fi. They have a capability to do that, make it simple like Wi-Fi.
And Mick, what's your view on that? I mean, how hard is it to manage?
Well, I mean, it's a big issue, right? I mean, so and way back in the early days when we started, right? I remember speaking to this customer and he said, "Look, I've just spent the best part of €3 million, right, deploying DAS, small cell, private LTE, you know, the operators' networks around this big campus." You know, and he said, "I've nothing to show my chief sort of financial officer that it's working." You know, so we set out then. We did a dashboard so that with one look you can see exactly what the network is doing. You know, we enabled the IT guys to do the simple things on the network, like configure new users. You know, create groups. You know, send messages, integrate with third party. Process operations. But I think a lot more can be done. Particularly, you know, I think we need more integration between people like us, like Druid, Softcore, and the radio vendors to be able to configure the radios easily and quickly, and be able to let really, you know, the IT guys actually look after the whole network, manage it, deploy it, expand it, you know, and that is possible. I think we're very, very close there, and we've done it. We've come a long way to make it simple. Our vision is to have somebody who can, configure and manage an IP PBX. They should be able to manage a private LTE network. That's our vision.
And Uwe, I've got to ask, in the industrial space, I mean, Siemens and other, big manufacturing companies are looking at this very seriously. Yep. Is the kind of the secret sauce, if you like, in the network management, or is it in the industrial experience?
Mm-hmm. The secret sauce, yeah, for sure. I said we have their discussions in this alliance with many verticals. There are the big ones, which you mentioned, for example, Siemens, but there are also very, very small ones inside there, especially coming from Europe or also from Germany. And they are always saying, okay, what is important for me is that the data has a certain data integrity. And this means for them that on one side, they don't want to avoid that their knowledge, their IP is going outside. So that's an important thing. So how to secure this data, how to make it safe, that nobody can attack this from the outside. But additionally, they're also looking, as I said before, on this availability and reliability topic. And therefore, they are open for use cases and who will also operate this. If this is via a public network or non-public, or you can call it private, as I said there. But they said, if you fulfill these requirements, then we are open to this. And for sure, it depends also which knowledge and how big these companies are. Can they work maybe on their own private network, or do they better rely on the ones who are doing this since many years, the operators, the carriers?
Have you got can I ask, maybe, have you got a sense in the industrial and the manufacturing area, have you got a sense of how much of this traffic is going to go in licensed spectrum and how much might go in unlicensed? Yeah. I mean, we've seen that the 3GPP is opening up the 5 and the 6 gig bands potentially to unlicensed. I mean, that's a big move.
Which bands? I think we come also later to this. But I would say currently this is from the companies who want to use this, they are open for both approaches. So if this is unlicensed or licensed. In fact, from current use, between the main usage is currently, as I said, is done via wired. So there's even the rest is then, if it's currently wireless, at least in Europe, again, it's Wi-Fi. So therefore it's unlicensed. But in future, as I said, this is really open. They are open from these discussions in this forum alliance, if this is unlicensed or licensed. And I think there will be a fair share, from my view, whatever fits better and fulfills these requirements. So I would say I cannot predict this at the moment, to give an honest answer.
David, can I ask you, about that, and just generally, perhaps, if you to put your AT&T hat on, maybe, just for a moment, and ask, your view on and how this is playing out. Perhaps.
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I think that maybe to address, how it's going to be operated briefly. I mean, because from an operator perspective, I'll say that actually, from a small cell forum perspective, we're actually seeing operators where a couple of years ago they were totally against private LTE, really against it. But now we're really starting to see that shift because they're really just trying to find from their business model, from their ownership model, that this makes total sense. Now, from an enterprise perspective, whether they're using licensed or unlicensed, I think one of the biggest components that drive that is neutral host and shared networks. Now, we all know that these private LTE networks are built to be shared, and a lot of the enterprises are really, what we're finding from the forum again, a lot of enterprises with the work in our Enterprise Advisory Council and where we have direct contact with the enterprises, give and take feedback and requirements. If they have a neutral host need, they're pushing for a private network. They're pushing for CPRS in the U.S. or equivalent bands in France and Germany, and really are driving towards that neutral host model that pushes them this way.
Okay. And we'll get on to I guess some questions about 5G in this, but Mick, can we talk about use cases and what for want of a better expression, what you've enjoyed working on or you found most kind of interesting from a technical point of view? Perhaps you can share something there.
I suppose the execution in the port of Rotterdam, where it's it's a really large scale port automation program. The cranes and gantries are all automated. Like, it's a complete personalist environment. Like, it's a very dangerous environment, so that's good. But everything is automated. The container tractor units are automated as well, and it's just a great example. But it's very, very mission critical. I mean, so that was really an achievement for ourselves. And I have to mention the partners, Cunning and Hartman, who were our systems integration group, who actually executed that. We worked with them, and it was a wild success. I mean, seeing what they've done with the port is just it is amazing. I mean, the ports, it is like an airline. They want to get the ships in, they want to get them emptied, they want to get them refilled and out of there as quickly as possible. And we're really aiding and abetting the efficiency of the port. So it's that was really.
And I guess you're running a range of kind of connectivity technologies within that, the low power wide area stuff at one level, and then the mobile broadband, enhanced mobile broadband stuff as well. Yeah,
well, okay. In that particular instance, it is all sort of 4G, private 4G. So it's all I won't name the vendors, but it is sort of 4G running on, I believe, band 40, band 42. The port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Okay, and Piyush, I mean, can you talk about the MulteFire, the latest version that's come out, and how this taps into this narrowband and LTE-M space, and the applications you see kind of opening up there for you?
Yeah, so I think what we have seen with enterprise, talking to different venue segments, malls, and the recent one we deployed in Phoenix Speedway, which is a racetrack in Phoenix, Arizona, in US. And one of the things we realized is we deployed a Wi-Fi network, but we also had a CPRS network. And the CPRS network was mainly for the track operations and for point of sales. And what we realized was that was a lot of benefit for the venue owner, because now you have kind of a HOV lane or a fast lane where they can actually have those kind of mission critical applications. Where we see in future, there's a lot of applications in venues for cameras. Like, for example, there's new technology coming out in cameras that requires a lot of bandwidth. And it's not possible to wire every camera because it's very expensive. And you need a lot of bandwidth for that. So even when 5G comes in, when you need more bandwidth, you need every bit of spectrum. And you also need technology like LTE, which is more secure and robust. And you can't put, obviously, Wi-Fi for everything. You need both at the same time. They're complementary to each other. So where I see the use of MulteFire in the 5 gigahertz band, it really helps drive those applications. Now you have a lot more bandwidth. So I think every bit of spectrum where you can deploy LTEs can be helpful for those kind of applications.
Uwe, can I kind of ask you the same question essentially about MulteFire in that space which you're working in, how you see that ramping up from here?
I would say from the frequencies, if you look at this, as explained before already, this depends a little bit on the country. And for sure there are differences from country to country, and a special example is, for example, Germany. There will be soon an auction on this topic where they want to, or where they currently the plan is to reserve 100 megahertz band. In this case it's 3.7 to 3.8, especially for these use cases, which will be licensed and can be used as a private network. So you can do this for sure based on LTE, you can do this based then on 5G, but this special band has then the option, which is you can call it also license-free band, but okay, there will be certain conditions also behind this. What you have to fulfill means in a certain time, in rough, I think if I remember correct, in 1 year you have to deploy a certain number also of cells there, and you have to fulfill for sure requirements not disturbing, interfering with neighbors in a certain range if you're using this as a private network.
Okay, thank you. And David, I wonder if you can talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, I think Stefan mentioned it earlier, the spirit within this MulteFire Alliance, how you see that kind of spreading through the mobile community, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that with, it's really nice to see how the shared networks with private LTE really bring some of the applications that the enterprises are looking for. IoT being the biggest, and in the forum, we've been working on industrial IoT, even with a recent document release that we put out for IoT use cases that's available on our site at scf.io. But what we see it varying, in application of whether it be based on latency or high bandwidth or massive connections, in that IoT space. And I think that the industry, associations working together, whether it be the small cell forum with MulteFire, with CPRS Alliance, are really looking at those cases and the neutral host capabilities and the shared networks of the private LTE to really drive that tipping point with those deployments.
And this is, this is a 5G show. I mean, everyone's talking 5G. Mick, talk to me about 5G and private 5G networks and how transformative, I guess, that will be to your proposition and to the kind of use cases you can serve.
Well, I mean, for me, it's the same with the public networks. I mean, for the private side, I mean, it's all about bigger bandwidth, better throughput, but lower latency is really big as well in our business, and it's going to enable us to address more of those sort of camera opportunities that you spoke about, and it just opens up more possibilities, and we're particularly sort of excited about the low latency element of it because we see that as being key, going forward for the private side in terms of the industrial automation that we've been involved with.
And Piyush, can you comment on that on the way that 5G will play into this market, and what you hope and expect going forward?
Yeah, I think 5G obviously will bring in all these high bandwidth, low latency applications, and enterprise needs every bit of it. Like if you look at every sector, like if you look at a sporting venue now, most of them trying to get into virtual reality applications. That requires a lot of bandwidth, reserve bandwidth to support those applications, and 5G will play a major role. Another things that 5G is going to bring is network slicing, is how you can have multiple services with different quality of service requirement running on the same technology. And that is going to drive a lot of different use cases, particularly industrial, whether you take venues, because obviously right now you're limited with some applications and how much you can support in terms of QoS. So that will definitely open up a lot of opportunities in different industries.
Uwe, can you talk, at the moment, in terms of industrial applications, is there, what percentage, perhaps, are waiting for 5G? Need that 5G? Is there a whole lot out there, or actually will LTE serve them for the main part?
I think the companies, as I said, would start for sure also with private LTE. As soon as this is available, and this MulteFire, we had also discussions within this organization supporting from MulteFire that they say if this is available, for sure we will start with this. As soon as 5G comes into play, what already the others said with the additional options set to the low latency, for example, for this motion control with cranes or mobile robots moving, you have to immediately turn down them if something is on human safety related. This will help. And the discussion was also there with the network slicing, also in that group with the operators who are in there, that they can support this then also with various business models dedicated from 5G to this industrial space or industrial IoT applications, as I said, which have requirements which they see, as I said at the very beginning, similar to wired applications. Mm-hmm. So therefore 5G will help there with this new releases, especially which is planned in release 16.
And David, I mean, network slicing, does that somehow kind of supersede private LTE, or will they coexist? Where and could there be? Can you envision examples where some of it's running in unlicensed and MulteFire, and then the high-end kind of automated machinery is running on a public slice, or a slice which is taken off a public network kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely different, right? I mean, slicing really, what 5G brings again is enhanced mobile broadband, reduced latency, and then massive connections. What slicing does is allows the operator to really customize around those three for any specific customer or environment. And so that doesn't really matter whether it's in private LTE or in the macro space in the wide area network. What we really see is that these capabilities around those three things with slicing everything else will bring more and more applications that are going to force is a strong word, but it's going to drive the operators to densify. And with 70% or more of traffic, in building, that's low-hanging fruit. That's where the operators are going to have to densify in buildings, and right now that's largely untapped. And so we have a distinct opportunity here to fill this 5G need, bringing 5G together to solve all these different problems with real QoS that slicing brings, while we optimize the ownership models that we talked about. So this really should again cause we're seeing a very large uptick in growth in the enterprise space, much more than outside, and I expect that to continue based on all of this.
And I guess just to round off, I mean, 2018. We were here last year. I was here last year, and I spoke to various of the operators, and they were talking about private LTE and very kind of isolated proofs and this kind of stuff. So 2018 perhaps was not the year of private LTE, but 2019 seems like there's a shift. I wonder if we go back that way, David. What do you think? Is 2019, is it the year of private LTE, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're at that tipping point. I mean, I think that, there's still, I think, more devices that are needed, and so we're going to get over the hurdle in 2019 for sure. But largely, it's again, we're seeing everybody kind of energized positively around private LTE, from the operators, the vendors, and the enterprises, and so it should get over that hurdle and start going pretty strongly this year. Yes.
Uwe, sure. What are your thoughts?
I think as well, I said also from our discussions there with different vendors, verticals, enterprises, I said before. So if this is available, and it is available, I would also say so, that this year this should start. For sure, it depends again on the country, what there are the discussions and decisions from the regulators. This comes on top, but I would say yes, I think so as well.
Piyush?
Yeah, I think 2019 is definitely we'll see a momentum, a lot dependent on the device, assuming that there will be more device ecosystem, as David said, and also depends upon how we can work with enterprise to create more applications around that, like robots is another application. But finding those unique applications and then creating a device ecosystem around that will help drive a lot of momentum. And definitely the spectrum in US, particularly if CPRS commercialization hopefully will we get on time by next quarter, that will drive that. But devices definitely is going to be very critical.
Okay, and Mick?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I certainly have it in the forecast for 2019. But no, I think that everyone is really watching what's happening with CBRS, and I know that Germany have 100 megs ready to go there, right? But it's important for everybody in the industry that the CBRS experience is a good one. But I absolutely believe it's going to happen. We've a lot of pent up demand there. Just can't wait to get going.
Okay, thank you. I believe we've got time for questions. I think there's a microphone here, yeah.
Hi, I'm Julius from Small Cell Forum. Thanks guys. So I think you look at private LTE and it's kind of leveraging the massive investment that's come from essentially operators in the LTE technology to reliable technologies that are battle hardened and work with mobility and all that stuff. I guess my question is, are there applications, so private LTE networks, just operating on their own, but are there applications that can leverage the fact that we're using LTE for this and the devices that can then leverage the global network which is already up and running? So like maybe container tracking on that sort of thing. Do we imagine there's going to be applications that are really going to tap into that massive global investment in cellular networks?
Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
Well, we have, container tracking is a particular application that we've a lot of experience with. We've deployed sort of private LTE on ships to provide cellular IoT connectivity whilst the ships are on the high seas, and we're doing that already. So it's enabling sort of tracking pharmaceutical goods or perishables across the world. So that's happening already. I think we are there. I think you started off by saying that it's through the heavy investment of the operators, but also the device manufacturers. I'd say. Things like obviously smartphones have really enabled people to be broadband enabled whilst they move, which is fantastic, and that's really a big something not to forget as well.
Okay, any more? Yes, we've got one here in the second row.
Hi, Sam Fennick, editor of Land Mobile and Critical Communications Today. With the conversations you've been having with people who want to use private LTE networks for mission critical applications, how much reluctance is there about the use of unlicensed spectrum, and what are you doing to address those in any way?
The conversations we're having with these different enterprises is obviously you need to find, obviously every application doesn't require LTE. There are applications that can run on Wi-Fi also. But you have to find those applications that they have a need where they are actually not able to do that on Wi-Fi. Like camera is a great example. There's always jitter and other problems. LTE runs much better. So there is definitely a need for having a LTE kind of network. On the unlicensed band, right now the only options are, in US at least, is LAA, and obviously we don't have a device ecosystem on MulteFire yet, but it's all like how you take those applications and work with the device manufacturer or find different ways to do that. Like in CBRS, what we did is we go out and say, okay, there are modems there or USB dongles there, you can connect it. It's a temporary way, but it gets the ecosystem started and gets the market started. Similar thing you have to do on any band where you want to deploy. I think the only concern with unlicensed band or Wi-Fi is just that is the QoS and its ability because of the interference and all that. Those are concerns always there, and how robust the network is.
And of course, I'll just add that security on Wi-Fi is probably a concern as well, with the inherent security on the LTE protocol. It helps.
And Uwe, what about among the industrial sector, that resistance to? Is there a resistance to unlicensed? Would they, are they more comfortable in licensed, or is there?
I would say from this forum, yes, there is a certain resistance against unlicensed. But again, this depends on the application, as the other speaker said. So for where it's about high data, only high data, where the rest doesn't play really a role, where it's not safety critical, like this motion control, as I said, on cranes or something like similar. I think they are open to use this, to add this to the existing one, because LTE is available, 5G not yet, especially not everywhere soon. So therefore, depending on the application, I said, for example, this augmented reality, which in certain cases is not, like you said, for the video cameras, not so critical, they are also open to use unlicensed bands.
Mick, how do you find it as you tour around? Are you
Yeah, there's a difference between sort of unlicensed and unlicensed but managed, you know,
Yes.
and I think that's the big thing, you know. I mean, you know, CPRS is unlicensed, but it's going to be managed. So, you know, I think there's a lot of comfort in that, and people will trust it. I think, you know, some of the other unlicensed spectrum that's available is, you know, the guard band spectrum in some parts of Europe, and I know in some parts of Holland we have band 42, I think, as well as unlicensed. But you know, it's about control. It's about unlicensed but controlled, and I think that really, I think, is where people will find comfort, and you'll get big industry, you know, believing in that.
I'd even say that, though, that the customers and enterprises, and even in the industrial space or other, I'm not sure that they have a concern about whether something is their applications are on LTE or Wi-Fi. They don't really understand it. You know, the biggest issue that they will likely have is if the unlicensed LTE or CPRS is encroaching on their Wi-Fi spectrum that they use for their standard you know, IT operations, and that's the only real time that they start to have an issue if we're trying to, you know, of us trying to use the unlicensed band in their space.
Thank you. Any other? We've got one just behind you there. Oh, was there one at the front? Sorry.
Maybe comment for you, Mick. It looks very nice on paper, but for the majority of enterprises, I think they lack the education and resources to understand LTE. When I attend enterprise events, the IT staff doesn't talk about LTE. They don't know about it. And so my question is, do you see core network as a service maybe an enabler for private LTE?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'd have to agree with you. I mean, one of the other barriers to entry into marketplaces is finding, you know, educated, knowledgeable, experienced system integrators. You know, they're just not out there, and you know, we just go through a lot of training with them. And this is an issue with the US for us, where we're trying to pick, you know, the sort of channels to market, you know, who would have some knowledge and experience in the area of radio even and LTE. I mean, DAS vendors are one that we sort of like. But you're right. But core as a service is definitely one way around that, where we take the complexity away and run it from the cloud, and you just, you know, we have our channels deploying the radio, being experts in radio coverage, but actually the core function is sort of centrally provided. But that's certainly an issue, and you have it right. I mean, that's one way around it, is to do that. Yes. Yeah,
I completely agree with you. We are talking to like people who have very little experience with any of the wireless technology. So we have done is try to keep the conversation simple around the applications. Is what application needs what kind of wireless network and what SLA it can support. If you keep that, and all the secret sauce behind it is us who have knowledge and who can deploy, or the operator of the network, whoever wants to, or managed services provider, then it makes it very easy. But if you get into spectrum technology, it's too much complexity. If you don't live day to day, it's very hard for them to understand.
Okay, and I think we're about done, but we do have a question here, just the gentleman in the fourth row there.
Thank you. Murray Dobbin, Teleresources Engineering in Australia. My question revolves around the existing DAS systems that are installed in many buildings and facility owners, which are unable to support 5G deployment, will either need to be overlaid or replaced. Is this going to be an inhibitor for, we'll say, the deployment in the future, or is it an opportunity for neutral host facility owners to come in and take that over and deploy a managed service offering.
Okay, anyone want to take that? Piyush,
So I think you have a very good question. Obviously, every technology, every time you deploy something, there is a shelf life to it. And DAS networks that were deployed back in 10 years, 12 years back were all passive, just coax runs. When LTE came in, they have to be replaced because LTE requires a lot more stringent guidelines in terms of losses and all that. So at that time, you went to active networks and you put up fiber and some coax. I think the opportunity is in the world of convergence where you can converge Wi-Fi, LTE, private LTE, and DAS or cellular or small cells is you can still utilize the fiber. Fiber is there. Fiber is common. You need for both. But there is some new infrastructure that needs to be run to support the future technology. But the thing is, if you want to really run anything right now, you want to run something that you're prepared for 5G. That goes from your routers to switches, to your Cat6a cabling, not deploying Cat5 or Cat4, then you're again restricted by the gigabits per second. Like you can't have 10 gigabits network. So then 5G comes in, you have to rip and replace everything. So at this point of time, whatever you deploy, it has to be converged, supporting IoT, 5G, private LTE, future Wi-Fi 6.0. Otherwise, you basically end up in a risk of another 4 years and you're rip and replacing the whole thing.
Anybody want to add to that? Or is, okay.
It's an opportunity.
Yes.
All right, I think that's all we've got time for. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay.